Thailand is supposed to be paradise. Close your eyes and picture it, the sun glinting off turquoise waters, long-tail boats drifting lazily across the bay, and markets alive with a kaleidoscope of color, the noise of bargaining, and the irresistible smell of street food sizzling on charcoal grills. Millions of tourists used to flock here every year, drawn to the perfect mix of culture, beaches, temples, and nightlife. It was the kind of place you imagined in photos, travel blogs, or movies, the ultimate escape from ordinary life. But if you visit Thailand today, that paradise doesn't always feel as real as the images suggest. Hotels that once had waiting lists months in advance now have rooms available at bargain prices. The famous Land of Smiles, once overflowing with energy and warmth, feels quieter, almost hesitant to welcome visitors. Even Bangkok, a city celebrated for its chaotic energy and constant motion, now has stretches of streets where you can walk for blocks without encountering the constant hum of traffic, tuk-tuks, or chatter from tourists. At first glance, everything might appear normal. Tuk-tuks still zip through the streets, neon signs flicker above late-night bars, and the smell of grilled satay and coconut curry drifts through the air. But look closer, and the cracks start to appear. Restaurants that were once impossible to get a table at now sit mostly empty. Hotels have entire floors closed for renovations, waiting for a return of guests who may never come. Famous markets that used to overflow with shoppers now have empty stalls, vendors quietly packing up mid-morning, and a noticeable lack of the buzz that used to define these spaces. Walk through a popular night market or a beachfront street, and you'll notice something subtle but unsettling. Locals talk quietly about how hard it has become to make a living, how tips are lower, and how they worry if tourism will ever return to pre-pandemic levels. Even longtime shop owners and restaurant staff, people who have seen Thailand weather political unrest, natural disasters, and economic crises, speak with a hint of uncertainty in their voices. This moment feels different. The energy that once made the country hum, that made it feel alive and vibrant, is gone in many areas, replaced by quiet, tentative streets and half-empty venues. Tourists are still coming, but not in the numbers they used to. The streets feel emptier, the beaches less lively, and some of the country's iconic destinations no longer have the crowds that made them famous. For travelers who remember or have dreamed about Thailand at its peak, the contrast is jarring. The paradise that people imagined, the one captured in glossy travel magazines and social media posts, now feels paused. Waiting for something that may not return for a while, if ever. Even the smallest details reflect the shift. A tuk-tuk driver who used to hustle through packed streets now waits patiently at a nearly empty corner. A beachfront bar that once played live music every night now sits dark, its chairs stacked and tables unused. And a small temple, usually crowded with devotees and visitors, feels eerily quiet, the sound of birds and distant waves replacing human voices. Thailand's charm is still there, still palpable in the culture, the food, and the natural beauty. But the liveliness that made it the Land of Smiles has dimmed, and that quiet uncertainty is impossible to ignore. For anyone hoping to experience Thailand as it was, vibrant, bustling, and full of energy, the difference is striking. The paradise you imagined still exists in fragments, but the heartbeat of tourism, the pulse that once brought life to every street, market, and beach, is slower, quieter, and uncertain. And that's the reality for the country today. Thailand's economy has always leaned heavily on tourism, more than many visitors realize. It's not just the hotels or the nightlife that depend on foreign travelers. Street vendors selling sticky rice and mango, tuk-tuk drivers navigating Bangkok's chaotic streets, long-tail boat operators in the south, local tour guides, small souvenir shops, even massage parlors. All of them rely on a constant flow of tourists to survive. In 2019, tourism alone contributed nearly 20% to the country's GDP. That's massive for a nation of Thailand's size, and it means the rhythm of daily life is deeply tied to the presence or absence of visitors. Then the pandemic hit, almost like a switch being flipped. Airports closed, flights vanished, and entire cities that once hummed with activity fell eerily silent. Hotels that had hosted thousands of guests a month emptied practically overnight. Restaurants that had served generations of travelers closed their doors permanently. Even businesses that had operated for decades, family-run resorts, small boutique shops, traditional tour companies, vanished in a matter of months. The country that had built its economy on hospitality found itself in a sudden, paralyzing freeze. Some regions fared slightly better than others. Phuket, Chiang Mai, and parts of Krabi tried to rebound by targeting domestic tourism, offering discounted hotel packages and promotional tours. Streets filled with Thai tourists for a short while, but domestic travelers were never enough to replace the millions of international visitors that once kept the wheels turning. Airlines scrambled to adjust schedules and routes. Some quietly suspended services, while others reduced the number of flights, leaving gaps that weren't filled for years. Travel agencies scaled back their packages, some closing offices entirely, and luxury resorts that survived the closures began raising prices sharply, trying to recover lost revenue. Budget hotels, meanwhile, cut staff or shut entire wings of their properties to save costs. Small businesses were hit the hardest. Street vendors saw fewer customers and lower tips. Souvenir shops had racks of merchandise left unsold, and tuk-tuk drivers found themselves waiting in long lines for a single fare. Many locals were forced to find alternative work. Some took jobs in construction or farming, others sent remittances abroad, and a surprising number turned to informal gigs just to make ends meet. The social impact was as visible as the economic one. Neighborhoods that once thrived on tourism became quiet. Familiar sounds of chatter, bargaining, and laughter replaced by silence. Even now, the recovery feels uneven. Visitors may still see pristine beaches, gilded temples, and the occasional bustling market. But the underlying systems that support tourism are strained. Attractions operate on reduced schedules, guided tours run only a few days a week, and hotels have skeleton crews compared to their pre-pandemic. Staffing. The ripple effect is everywhere. Restaurants close earlier, nightlife areas are less crowded, and shops that survive struggle to stay open. For travelers hoping to experience the Thailand of memory, vibrant, bustling, alive with energy, the reality is sobering. The magic is still there in pieces, but much of the infrastructure that once supported it is still recovering. Walking through a quiet night market or a half-empty hotel lobby, it's hard not to feel that the Thailand visitors once adored is on pause, waiting for the economic lifeblood of tourism to fully return, and there's no clear timeline for when that might happen. It may seem counterintuitive, but Thailand's incredible popularity has actually contributed to many of the problems it's facing today. For decades, the country was the crown jewel of Southeast Asia, attracting millions of tourists each year. Cities like Bangkok, Phuket, Pattaya, and Chiang Mai were bursting with visitors, especially during peak holiday seasons. What was once considered a hidden gem for travelers seeking authenticity gradually became crowded, commercialized, and, in some cases, frustrating. Imagine arriving at a beach you've dreamed about for years, only to find it dotted with sunburned tourists, plastic chairs lined up along the shore, and stray trash washing up with the tide. Waves that should be crystal clear now sometimes carry floating debris, and the serenity you imagined is replaced by loud chatter, beach vendors pushing snacks and music blaring from nearby speakers. Or picture visiting a famous temple. Monks move quietly through the complex, but their path is interrupted by long lines of selfie stick-wielding travelers. Instead of calm and reflection, the atmosphere feels more like a crowded theme park, with cameras clicking and groups rushing from one photo op to another. Thailand's economy thrived on sheer volume. More visitors meant more revenue. But the very success that fueled growth has also created fatigue for travelers. Long lines at popular attractions, inflated prices, and experiences that sometimes feel manufactured have made many tourists reconsider whether the effort and cost are worth it. The allure of authentic Thailand is increasingly hard to find in the busiest tourist areas, and for many, the contrast between expectation and reality is jarring. The country's infrastructure, once capable of supporting the tourist boom, is now showing signs of strain. Roads in major cities and on popular islands are congested during peak hours, making what should be a short journey feel like a long ordeal. Airports swing between being overbooked and eerily quiet, and public transportation often struggles to accommodate the fluctuating number of visitors. Night markets, which were once vibrant hubs for food, music, and shopping, now often have empty stalls or fewer performers. Even areas that once had a reputation for charm and cultural authenticity are starting to feel like they're running on fumes. The imbalance between expectation and reality has left a growing number of potential visitors hesitant. Social media has amplified this effect. Viral images of overcrowded beaches, long queues at temples, and packed markets spread quickly, creating a perception that Thailand is less magical and more stressful than it once seemed. First-time travelers may arrive expecting paradise but leave feeling disappointed, while repeat visitors may delay their return or choose alternative destinations entirely. Overcrowding doesn't just affect the experience for tourists, it also strains local communities. Noise, pollution, traffic, and pressure on natural resources take a toll on residents who depend on tourism for their livelihood. The result is a cycle where both tourists and locals feel the stress of over-tourism, and Thailand's reputation as the idyllic getaway it once was begins to erode. For many travelers, the reality is clear. Thailand is still beautiful, still culturally rich, still full of incredible experiences, but the version of Thailand they imagined may no longer exist in the busiest and most popular areas. And that shift in perception is making more and more people pause before booking their next trip. For decades, Thailand was synonymous with affordability. Backpackers could survive on just a few dollars a day, savoring street food, taking cheap bus rides and sleeping in simple hostels. Even luxury travelers could enjoy high-end resorts, five-star service, and world-class experiences at prices that seemed almost impossible elsewhere. Thailand was the destination that felt accessible to everyone, from young adventurers on a shoestring budget to families looking for an exotic getaway without breaking the bank. But that perception is rapidly changing. Over the past few years, prices across the board have risen sharply, and travelers are starting to notice. Hotels, even mid-range options, have increased rates to offset losses from pandemic closures. Luxury resorts, which once offered irresistible deals, now charge significantly more just to maintain staffing, amenities, and operations. Flights to Thailand have become more expensive, too. Airlines, struggling to recoup revenue after years of canceled routes and empty cabins, now factor in higher fuel costs, fees, and limited seat availability, pushing ticket prices up further. It's not just accommodations and flights, even small everyday experiences. Things that used to define Thailand as a bargain have become more costly. Street food stalls that once offered meals for a couple of dollars now charge noticeably more. Tuk-tuk rides, once a cheap and fun way to navigate city streets, often come with inflated fares or surprise charges. Popular attractions, once accessible for a modest fee, sometimes now have steep entry prices, especially in tourist-heavy areas. Global factors have played a role too. Inflation worldwide, supply chain disruptions, and rising costs for imported goods all contribute to the higher prices visitors face. Post-pandemic recovery efforts also put pressure on businesses to increase revenue quickly, which unfortunately gets passed on to travelers. The result is that a vacation to Thailand today, when you factor in flights, accommodations, food, tours, and transport, can rival the cost of destinations in Europe or North America. For travelers comparing Southeast Asian countries, this shift is significant. Thailand, which used to feel like an unbeatable bargain, now feels expensive, especially when combined with the other challenges visitors face: crowded beaches, environmental degradation, and safety concerns. For budget-conscious travelers, families planning long vacations, or first-time visitors expecting value for money, the math often doesn't add up anymore. The perception that Thailand is affordable and accessible has been eroded, and for many, the rising costs are enough to make them reconsider or look elsewhere for a vacation. In a country that built its global tourism brand on affordability and value, this shift is particularly damaging. Thailand still offers incredible experiences, but increasingly, those experiences come with a price tag that makes travelers stop and think, is it really worth it anymore? Environmental and health issues are becoming major factors for travelers deciding whether to visit Thailand, and right now, the signs of strain are impossible to ignore. For decades, the country's beaches, islands, and national parks were considered idyllic escapes: pristine sand, crystal-clear waters, and lush forests that seemed untouched by time. But over-tourism has taken a toll. Popular beaches are crowded, sometimes uncomfortably so, and the impact of human activity is visible everywhere. Plastic bottles and food wrappers washed ashore, litter scattered across walking paths, and even small-scale construction encroaching on natural reserves. Coral reefs, which once teemed with vibrant marine life, are experiencing bleaching at alarming rates. Divers and snorkelers now report areas that used to be teeming with color and fish appearing dull, lifeless, or damaged. Some islands have seen unregulated development, resorts and restaurants built too close to the shoreline, disturbing ecosystems and threatening local wildlife. National parks, which were once sanctuaries for both locals and tourists, now struggle to balance the number of visitors with preservation. Hiking trails are eroded, signage is worn, and some parks are restricting access to prevent further damage. For visitors expecting the untouched paradise promoted in guidebooks and Instagram posts, the reality can feel disappointing or even concerning. Health concerns also play a role in shaping perceptions. Tourist-heavy areas sometimes stretch local hospitals and medical facilities beyond capacity. Outbreaks of illnesses such as dengue fever, seasonal flu, or foodborne infections can create anxiety among visitors. Seasonal flooding in the southern provinces, which affects popular beach destinations, and periods of poor air quality in Bangkok and Chiang Mai add another layer of hesitation for travelers. Even routine medical issues like heat exhaustion or mosquito-borne illnesses are heightened in crowded tourist areas. For a country that has built its global brand on wellness, relaxation, and natural beauty, these challenges are particularly damaging. Tourists today are more conscious than ever about sustainable and safe travel. They want destinations where they can feel secure, enjoy clean beaches and parks, and know that their presence won't contribute to environmental harm. When Thailand can no longer guarantee that, at least in some of its most popular spots, potential visitors may pause, think twice, or choose another destination entirely. The impact is subtle but profound. Walking along a beach that once felt untouched but now has litter washing up against the waves, or snorkeling in a reef that looks bleached and sparse, changes the perception of what Thailand represents. It's still beautiful, still culturally rich, and still full of experiences, but the environmental and health challenges are undeniable. And for many travelers, that's enough to make them hesitate before booking their next trip. Safety has become a growing concern for tourists in Thailand, and it's one of the key reasons why some travelers are thinking twice before booking a trip. It's not that Thailand is inherently dangerous, far from it, but reports of petty crime, scams targeting foreigners, and occasional confrontations in nightlife districts have been appearing more frequently than in the past. Even minor incidents, when amplified on social media, can affect the perception of millions of potential visitors. A taxi driver taking a longer route than necessary, a stolen wallet, an overpriced tour, or even being hustled at a night market can leave a traveler frustrated and wary. And when posts, reviews, or videos of these incidents go viral, the country suddenly seems less welcoming, even if these situations are isolated. Scams have become increasingly sophisticated. In tourist-heavy areas, it's not uncommon for visitors to be approached with too-good-to-be-true deals. Tuk-tuk drivers offering tours at suspiciously low prices, jewelers selling counterfeit gems, or massage parlors charging inflated fees after the service. Even seasoned travelers can fall victim if they're not careful. And while locals may see these incidents as small everyday challenges, for visitors they create a perception of risk that affects travel decisions. Then there's the question of political stability. Thailand has a long history of political demonstrations, and in recent years these protests have become more visible, particularly in Bangkok. For locals, these events are often routine or seen as part of civic life. For tourists, however, they can be alarming, especially when news outlets highlight clashes between protesters and police or when streets near key tourist sites are blocked. Even temporary restrictions, road closures, or heightened security measures can create the impression that travel is risky. prompting visitors to postpone or cancel trips. The impact of these safety concerns is amplified by the global media and travel advisories. Many governments now post alerts or warnings about travel to specific regions of Thailand, advising tourists to exercise caution in certain districts or avoid large gatherings. While these advisories are often precautionary, they reach millions of people and can heavily influence perceptions. Tourists comparing destinations in Southeast Asia, places like Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia, or Indonesia, may opt for locations that appear simpler, safer, and more predictable. The combination of petty crime, tourist scams, and political unrest creates a subtle but powerful deterrent.